culture's important, but how do you define culture? Culture's difficult to define on a job advert because this is when you get all this pool table.
Culture's what people say about you when you're not in the room, isn't it?
Exactly.
So is it fair to say there's a bit of a skills gap between what students are being taught and the needs of the actual companies?
Absolutely, 100%. It's really quite criminal, actually. It'll give a greater ability for people to take the mundane tasks to maybe it's a smaller level and actually really get creative.
Yeah.
Which then that kind of flips it on its head a little because you think about, oh, okay, so there's all this tech coming in to marketing and we've already discussed the difference between technical people and creative people, but maybe the tech can help people get even more creative.
Yeah.
So I think that's exciting.
That is exciting. Yeah. Welcome to Socially Unacceptable, the only podcast for marketers, PR professionals, entrepreneurs that actually celebrate the biggest mistakes, mishaps and misfortunes and help you learn from their lessons. In every episode, we'll do our best to deep dive into the stories from renowned brands and expert marketeers who've made the mistakes and then they've picked themselves back up. During the show, we do our best to explore the failures and what helped turn these brilliant marketers into the people that they are today. So, if you enjoy the show, do let us know in the comments. Please let us know in the comments. I read every one. You can subscribe to us on any platform at sociallyunacceptable.co.uk. There's every platform you want in there. In this week's episode, we have Melanie Parker. Melanie's passion is talent acquisition and recruiting the best talent for scaling digital businesses. Why have we invited a recruitment specialist on the show? Don't switch off. So the answer is because Melanie's covering how can you get more creative people into your team? So if you've been trying to find the right candidate for your marketing team and you just can't get them, or they're not staying long enough, this chat is for you. We grill her on everything to do with talent acquisition and finding the right people, because I know it's difficult to get the right people, and we all know that people are what it's about. Creativity is all about the people. So hopefully today's chat will remove all the preconceptions you've got over what a recruitment consultant is. So sit back, relax, and let's hear how you can attract the best creative talent to your brand.
Welcome to Socially Unacceptable, from f***ups to fame, the marketing podcast that celebrates the professional mishaps, mistakes and misjudgments while delivering valuable marketing and life lessons in the time it takes you to eat your lunch.
Welcome to Socially Unacceptable. Thanks for joining us. This week we have the founder and director of Graph Talent, Melanie Parker. Welcome to the studio, Melanie.
Thank you very much for having me.
Do you want to just go through a little bit about what your expertise is in the marketing sector so you can tell our listeners what you're all about?
Yep. So I started off in recruitment. I'm in my third decade, believe it or not. It's quite a long time. So started off doing sort of marketing roles in a sort of commercial capacity. And then I went to work at Leeds Beckett University and set up the UK's first student and graduate specialist recruitment business within a university. And there I worked with some wonderful people from the faculty, Neil Kelly, Robert Minton-Taylor. So I worked across PR, marketing and journalism. And really I kind of created an employment engagement team we were very active in finding roles for students and graduates coming straight out of university into marketing roles.
So is it fair to say there's a bit of a skills gap between what students are being taught and the needs of the actual companies?
Absolutely, 100%. It's really quite criminal, actually. You see it in the lack of portfolios from entry talent. You know, I can't understand why they're not told to kind of make sure they've got a really good quality portfolio to enter the market. But actually, because I recruit from sort of grads up to senior level as well, you still see big skill gaps at any level. So unfortunately, for marketing, the skill gap, it stretches right across your entire talent pool.
So what does that mean then for graduates, leaving university looking for a job? Does it mean unpaid work experience, or do they start with companies and then have to get rapidly upskilled?
Oh, you've asked me the question there that always gets me on fire. So when I was at Leeds Beckett University, we worked with the PRCA to actually whistleblow on unpaid internships, especially now against, diversity and inclusion, it's absolutely despicable to not pay students for work that is done. And I was very, very aware of, well, I wouldn't work with any company who wouldn't pay students and graduates, full stop. I just don't know why that's the thing. And, especially now, how can you say you're diverse and you're inclusive when you're creating opportunities for people who can afford to do them if they've got some way of income from parents or some other unfair advantage? So myself and Robert Minton-Taylor from Leeds Beckett University, alongside the PRCA, did quite a big expose on unpaid internships. But they absolutely shouldn't do it.
So are you saying I guess when we talk about internships, what are we talking about here? A week, 2 weeks working somewhere, one day a week, half a day a week?
I think the maximum should be 2 weeks. If the student or the graduate is really having a problem getting their foot in the door, I would advise students and graduates 2 weeks, make that your maximum, but don't go over. Because I was very privy to the fact there was an agency who I won't name because it's not nice to do, that would get student and graduates work and they would bill that out as billable work.
Wow.
Exactly.
So people listening to this are going to be either heads of marketing departments. They want to grow their creative teams.
Mm-hmm.
Interns, I'm totally with you on this. Like I did free work experience at university. I was a graduate of the PR degree. I went to Leeds Beckett University. I learned there. I learned under Robert Minton-Taylor and other teachers,
legend.
and I know quite well. But I worked for free for time during a student, and not because I'm from a well-to-do background. I'm from a working-class background. My dad's in construction. I wasn't funded. I funded myself because I believed in my career. The internship thing, in my opinion, and I don't know what other marketing people listening to this will make of it, is a two-way process. Because at the end of the day, you're getting your foot in the door. You're getting experience with decent quality people, but you're not. It depends on the sort of experience you're giving to people. We don't get people in to work with the photocopier or whatever, because I don't believe that's growing people's career development needs or whatever. I think that if you get somebody and you give them proper tasks, so they build it, and you can see how good they are, they can learn and they get an experience. I thought COVID was a tough time for that as well. Mm-hmm. So I suppose what's your take on today? Then you're saying that people should pay, everybody, whatever they're doing in marketing, should pay interns outside
of 2 weeks, absolutely. Yeah, I just don't think there's any justification for anything else. By 2 weeks, they've proven what they're capable of. So now, unless you're going to keep them doing sort of tasks that are not actually going to help their career, pay. And it's just that simple. And honestly, I find, a lot of opportunities, particularly for our Yorkshire and the M62 corridor, opportunities in London, for example, our graduates can't go and do that or couldn't go and do that. How on earth are you meant to live? How are you meant to pay the transport costs? Where are you supposed to stay? So, like one of the biggest people who's guilty of that is a extremely wealthy fashion label, for example, that just absolutely categorically refuses to pay. And I used to come across companies all the time that would say, your graduates need me more than I need them. Which that was what? So you don't need to worry about your talent acquisition. You don't need to worry about your pipelines. You don't need to worry about what narrative you're putting out there to the young generation. That's not right.
The slave labor, it's like slave labor.
It is.
There was
disgusting.
Is it Devil's Wear Prada, where she's working for nothing?
Yeah.
And in the fashion industry is a thing. And so the work that Robert and yourself and others did in that area, I remember when the PRCA and Robert did that campaign, it was interesting but it did bear fruit on whether it made you think about work experience. But because I'd come from that background and that's my experience, we followed that process anyway. But I get that some people would exploit that system.
Some people
would use work experience people as full-on employees, which just doesn't feel
Well, the
authentic
whole
or fair.
reason I set up the agency in the university in the first place was when I got there, I wasn't meant to be running a recruitment business for them. But I got there and I was like, look at all this wall-to-wall talent. Look at all these bright kids. What on earth are they all doing? And then at that point, people were like working in bars, working in retail and things. And everyone was so comfortable with saying they've got highly transferable skills. I'm a recruiter. It's not transferable. I'm a hiring manager. It's not transferable. You can't say, oh, I've worked at Nando's and I'm going to be brilliant in a client pitch. It's just like worlds apart.
From the PR side of things, I taught, so I was a graduate of the university, then I taught on the course.
Yeah.
And then I had a program of work experience at Prohibition. We introduced it where we'd give people either a week or 2 weeks, they'd come in and do work experience. And if they were exceptional, then we'd say, would you like to come in 1 day a week or for during the holidays? And we'd pay them.
Exactly.
And I've got 2 people out there now who from that.
And that's the benefit.
That's the best way of that's the best way of doing it. So I suppose one of the questions I've got is, what are the biggest mistakes that marketing professionals, head of marketing departments are making in 2023? Where are they going wrong?
In terms of trying to find talent, or in terms of
trying to find the right creative talent to grow their brand? Because there's people out there, they'll be nodding their heads to this, like thinking, I have tried. I've advertised my role. It's been advertised for 3 months. I've had people apply. They're all underqualified. They're all overqualified. Just not the right creative candidate.
Elongated recruitment processes for interviews at that level. If it's under 35,000, there's no need for them. Literally, there's no need. They're too long. Candidates do not want to be jumping through all of these hoops anymore. The times have changed. When you were in an employer-led market, the employer could set the bar and demand all these things of candidates. Candidates have got opportunities galore. You might not want to hear it. People might not want to hear it, but it's a fact. So at any level, actually, you've got people queuing up. The talent skills gap in this area is so sort of critical that you're going to have to change the way you do things. There's no simple fix to this. You know, I've been recruiting for 30 years and there's no sort of like one pill will magically make it all better. But long interview processes are a major issue.
So for us, we've been going 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
Never used a recruitment consultant for an entry-level post. Never had to. Last role we just put out, we got 87 applicants.
Yeah. But it's the quality.
The quality of the
quality
applicants.
like?
Yeah. The quality, well, there's varied qualities. But then we have used recruiters for different levels, the more senior positions. And I would say that the quality can still be dubious, depending on
We're jumping questions here, though, because let's not get onto recruiters, because that's a whole different bag. But where can I give you actionable things for you to do? If you're a marketing manager, if you're a hiring manager, let's focus on what you can do. I think what you can do is you have to shorten your interview process. It is, like I was saying, it's not an employer-led market anymore. It's an employee-led market. Now, in 30 years of this city, recruiting, marketing, talent, PR, journalism, all the other bits and pieces I do, I used to have a lovely time. I used to be able to put adverts out. I used to get nice pool of people applying for jobs, all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, wanting to do the best. We don't have to worry about Yorkshire, London, Manchester. We've got to worry about Europe. We've got to worry about the world. So many people want our talent, and the kind of that it's really hard. The talent pool is so reduced now. And if businesses, for example, do things, say, for example, I'm a big fan of in-office. I'm 50 years of age. It's all I've ever known. So I like being in the office. But a lot of the generation behind me, they don't like it. And actually, they're really putting up a fight to not have to go back into the office in the way that companies now, since obviously COVID's kind of thankfully gone away, are wanting. So there's a huge disconnect between what the employee wants and what the employer wants. And sometimes in industries, there can even be a slight bit of arrogance, but we are whoever they say they are. That should be enough. That's not enough.
So that's an interesting point. Let's say we're, not even talking about agencies now, mid-level company, mid-sized marketing team. What can they do to attract talent then? So clearly, there's more, the power is with the employee in effect, as you've just said. So mid-level marketing team, 10 in the marketing department, not massive budgets, they probably can't pay top wages. What can they do then to really attract talent?
Well, it has to be about employer brand, and it has to be about somehow getting your message out there. So there's ways to do this, but you need to, when I'm working with SMEs and startups, one of the things they're really critically concerned about is, I'm not big, nobody will know who I am. I can't compete against XYZ. And I'll just put my pen down and say, well, why are you trying to compete? You can't compete. Let's look at what you can't compete on. Location, salaries, perks, benefits. But now we have to find the USP that makes a big difference. We have to find the talking point about this company. And we have to start to talk to the candidates about why this business makes good sense to join. throughout my career, I've always helped startups and SMEs way more because I can, with total honesty and authenticity, say to candidates, if this depends on a person's point of view, right? Everyone's different. But if you want the corporate life, you're not going to have a full education in the field. Like if you're in a smaller business, you've got the CEO, the MD on hand. If you're early talent, this is your opportunity to be absolutely leaning into that seniority and learning like a little sponge. That's what you should be doing. But it's like, I find a lot of people fall on their own sword by being intimidated by bigger companies with bigger brands. I've done it myself when I've recruited for my team. I think I'm only graft, I'm only tiny. But that's how I kind of work this out. It's like, imagine going in for an interview and somebody apologising for being who they are. It's not the best start, is it? If someone's saying, I'm sorry we can't pay you the going rate, I'm sorry we don't have the fancy offices or whatever it is. So you're far better to create, and you're marketers after all, and PR experts, so you need to craft your own story about why it's good to join.
So talk us through that then. So, how would one go about, creating or understanding what your employer brand is?
You have to look at your why. You have to look at why you set the company up in the first place. What is it about this collective group of people you're trying to employ that makes sense? You have to look at not only the technical skill, but you have to look at the soft skills as well. And they always get, obviously they're becoming more prominent now, but I'm a firm believer that people can be taught anything, but you can't teach people to turn up on time, to be present, to really want to graft if it's not in them. So I think, to me, if I was in that kind of mid-size agency space, I would be looking at my why. I'd be looking at what I was trying to achieve. You have to get your narrative on point so people want to join and they feel compelled to join. And it's also managing expectations. Like so many companies feel they've got to be perfect. The world isn't perfect. And actually, when you're a startup and you're SME, say we don't know all the answers. Be humble. Sometimes this over slick kind of messaging is confusing to people. And actually, it takes nothing for candidates these days to deselect. So you have to be really careful about the narrative you're pushing out and make sure, especially if it's at the younger end, it's more about this is what a typical day, like give them some clues about what's expected of them, but not, really.
So you're saying kind of transparency from the earliest kind of interaction with a candidate.
Yeah.
Tell them your values, tell them your why.
Yeah.
Talk about why you're different to other people in the market.
What do you think the most in-demand marketing skills are at the moment?
I'd say video and data.
You're safe, Andy.
No,
yeah.
It's not.
Videos because everyone prefers now to watch video as opposed to reading a blog or some other content. It's quick, it's snappy, they can do it anywhere. So video is on point. And I think, honestly, like marketing tools, the whole kind of SEO, PPC, the whole data analytics, the whole data science behind the stuff that makes your clients sit up and listen to say, I'm putting this money into this campaign, but I can absolutely robustly see through black and white data where my money's going and where my ROI is. I think for marketing, it's, the whole industry's had to become technical experts as well as creatives. And so there's a kind of schizophrenic pattern in that.
Because creatives, as much as they try to pretend they're data analytical specialists, they're two totally different creatures.
Yeah.
And they are. They're like a proper creative who, sucking on his glasses and pontificating and taking that time to incubate those ideas. Yeah. There's clever, smart people out there that are much more intelligent than me. They're not really the data analysts, but like you say, the modern marketer has to tie into the analytic. What are the data saying? What is the latest campaign? What's the click-through rate? What's the view? How long are people staying on a particular page or whatever?
Yeah,
it is fascinating. So what do you think are exciting marketing trends at the moment that are coming out for employers?
Honestly, I think video is really exciting. I think, like we're seeing the start of it now, but when you look at the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, all the kind of vision-led pieces of social. I still as well, call me old, but I still like thought leadership. I still like decent quality content. I think
podcasts.
Like podcasts. Little shout out. I think it's worrying from an AI perspective what's going to happen, because I know some agencies who are saying, oh, it's great now because we don't need copywriters because we've got AI. And I'm like, well, you want to be careful with that, because if your client's expecting that a human has created it, shouldn't you be upfront about that? I think there's a time to bring it in, but to kind of like mislead. And I think, AI is obviously very prominent and it can be utilized well, but like all things, I don't think you can replace human.
It's not finessed though, and it's not creative. It's and I've said this on this podcast before, it's the average of averages at the moment. However, I did use something really cool yesterday called Otter AI. So for all you listeners out there, if you're not using Otter AI for meetings, go off and use that on a Teams meeting. Record your call. It'll transcribe your call. And then you can have a chat with it, and it will pull anything from the chat. You don't even have to say, this is an action or that's an action. You can just say, give me the actions from the call. And then you can say, write me a follow-up email, and it writes it out perfectly. It's quite frighteningly brilliant, actually.
Well, I was going to say, like, just to flip this around a minute, take the heat off me for a second, only joking. Do you think as marketers that you will encourage your clients to use AI? Yeah. I keep on thinking, well, what's the perfect blend of human and AI?
Well, the perfect blend is we're using it as a tool. So for instance, after this, I've used AI to create some of the questions that I've got for you today, to look at the key topics in the recruitment sector and creativity. Our producer after this will run the video and sound through some AI to polish it up and make sure it sounds better. Then our marketing team will take the podcast and run the podcast through its podcast platform, and the AI will then transcribe it. And it'll never get it 100% right. Everything has to be checked. That's just 3 or 4 examples of how, and it's saving time. That's all it is. But do I think that people, I've got 30 PR professionals, are they all going to go out and use AI? We're just get rid of everybody and get an AI to create their press releases and send them out. No, because humans have the human like the experience we've got now. You've got your experience, but I will say it's quite shocking when you have a 30-minute conversation with someone. It records it, and then you can interrogate it through a chat, and it'll pull it all out like it's thought the process through. That to me is like another level of AI.
Yeah.
This writing AI and is interesting, but this, where you can interrogate it, and it is creating something that is inferred from your conversation, not that you specifically said. That is when it's getting exciting for me, because that is gonna look. Jobs are gonna change, not be gone. If you know what I mean. We're gonna get to do more interesting things.
Are employers yet demanding it as a skill then, AI, or are you not yet
on the
seeing
tech
that?
side? Yeah, I think in marketing, no, haven't had any job come across my desk. Literally, that is the sort of sector knowledge expertise, if you like, is AI. But I think the industry, I don't know. It like you say, everyone's just getting used to it. What is this new version? I remember. I don't do anything to do with accountants or finance recruitment, but the analogy I'd like to potentially use is to think about, remember when accountants had to do bookkeeping, and so their whole life was like on Excel spreadsheets, and now everyone's got sort of SaaS products to manage their accountancy, which means actually accountancies now should be better because they've got more time to consult with us as opposed to getting heads down and filling in columns. So actually I wonder if in marketing, this is what I feel, it'll give a greater ability for people to take the mundane tasks to maybe it's a smaller level and actually really get creative, which then that kind of flips it on its head a little, because you think about, so there's all this tech coming in to marketing, and we've already discussed the difference between technical people and creative people, but maybe the tech can help people get even more creative. So I think that's exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. Let's circle back for a moment to talent acquisition then. So employers listening to this, they're running marketing teams. What else are potential recruits looking for in a company then? So, let's assume we can't pay top whack. There's always going to be a company willing to pay bigger wages. So, where does things like training, obviously we've talked about culture, I think the cliche a few years ago used to be, we've got a snooker table in the office and we've got table football.
Yeah,
certainly when I started.
It's not even a cliche. I heard the other week somebody on another podcast that I listened to saying, "Oh yeah, we've got a beanbag and a pool table." It's still the thing people mention. But
so should we all run out?
I don't think anyone cares about that.
So we shouldn't run out and buy beanbags and pool tables.
I really wouldn't bother.
I'd bought a massive pool table.
I'd put it into like tangible benefits like learning and development. That's a really good key point. I don't often see people talk about when you start this job. Yeah, obviously everyone's aware what they're doing when they accept the job, and that's the job they've got. But what about after? I still hear so many people say, I don't want them to be too ambitious. I mean, what the hell does that mean? How can you not want it doesn't mean because somebody's saying, I'm accepting this job, I want to do this job. It doesn't mean to say they want to be hired in, a CEO in month 3. But it's like, if you don't give people the tools to say, this is what you can expect your journey to be with us, or our intention is, but it's showing goodwill to lean into things that people want. And it is things like, marketeers now as well. I rarely see on marketing jobs descriptions what tech stack they're using. So there's no note to how technically advanced they are. But it would be best to say whatever tools you use and to put it on the job description, because then obviously if people have got that skill, and if not, then they're getting clues about what they need to get. So, I like things like Coursera, Google Digital Garage, Udemy, things like that. You could say from a learning and training point of view, it now doesn't have to be so expensive. It's not actually expensive, but what people seem to struggle to give is the time and the space for people to learn.
Training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a great way to training. We're all using bloody video calls now. So we record we do loads of internal training's like built into what we do, but we have internal training courses. There's been one this morning, hasn't there, with all the juniors, and that's recorded on Teams, and then that's then stuck on our intranet, and people can then click on it and then watch it, for new employees. And it's not extra work, right? It is for that person to prepare that deck, but then they present their ideas and their thoughts processes, and then it's probably relevant for a couple of years. It can be really relevant.
A culture of learning, the kind of the internal mobility where people can see how they can progress. What else do we need to think about?
Culture's important, but how do you define culture? Culture's difficult to define on a job advert, because this is when you get all this pool table.
Culture's what people say about you when you're not in the room, isn't it? That's what I read yesterday.
So I always encourage employers to use the people in the company who are not the hiring managers to talk about the culture. I don't know why the hiring managers think they've got carte blanche on every decision. Use, the talent you've got in your own organisation. Get them to say, why do you like working here? Everyone's so savvy on Glassdoor now. Everyone will instantly go on, check the kind of reviews. It doesn't mean to say they'll make a decision based on what they see. Sometimes companies can have not such a great star rating, but people will still go ahead and put in applications. But things that matter is things like really good feedback. People want to feel listened to. It's really important, particularly in these generations. They want to feel like their voice is being heard and they've been listened to. So I think it's doing small things internally where you can have kind of, there's because even now, right? So you guys will be mega successful at what you do, right? Your juniors will probably be a little bit more digital native, maybe. So I don't know, you could be secret techies. But I don't see working like workshops with a blend of knowledge, because the people who are very senior might think, well, what could I learn? But I think if there's no ego involved, then the training should be the juniors teaching the slightly older teams about technology, why it's important and how they use it. And the older generation can then teach the younger generation about why things like, building really good relationships is super important, and why to, not be afraid of the phone and not be afraid to pick the phone up. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I sometimes think people just can't go on a level. And
so we're talking less hierarchy, more of a horizontal structure.
Want a flat structure.
Is that a new thing? And I was interested to hear you talk about people wanting to be listened to. And I feel like perhaps 10 years ago, there was a much stronger hierarchy. Junior member of staff would never dare talk to the chief exec. But now that all seems to have gone out the window.
Yeah, it's flattened. And in the two markets I'm recruiting, so like tech and marketing, tech really just has embraced flat structures, remote working, advances in technology, and always on learner mindset is absolutely key in technology. And in technology, you'll never hear a senior developer ever say, I know everything. The expectation is you don't know everything. Sometimes in this industry, I think people think is a mark of like, to distinguish them, that they say they're the experts. It's kind of dangerous saying you're the expert. I think if you're close to learning, I don't think that's a good message. So sometimes I think, where technologists tend to be very sort of down to earth and less bothered about structure and hierarchy and positioning, and just say, actually, I know nothing about this language. I feel like I'm good on Python, for example, so I'm going to go and learn SQL or SQL. And that's all right. No one judges them for it. But sometimes in different industries, if you don't know something, people feel judged. I think that's a bit wrong.
The other piece I'm quite interested in is talent retention. So you spend a lot of time recruiting, you find someone brilliant, you hire them, you train them, you onboard them. Hours and hours and hours of work for everybody involved, huge amounts of energy, emotional energy, and then they piss off somewhere else. So how do we stop that? How can we retain talent in a sustainable way without having to necessarily resort to pay bumps every quarter?
Yeah, no, it's tough. And it really is tough because everyone's being headhunted all the time. Like 30 years of recruitment, headhunting was reserved for executive level positions. It's not now. Everybody's headhunting at every single level, not just locally, nationally, in Europe, I'm seeing a big sort of trend, if you like, for people getting digital nomad visas and actually working in Spain or wherever, but still being employed by UK companies, but choosing to live and work elsewhere. I think with retention, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got to balance the needs of your business against what an employee wants. And of course, an employee is always going to want everything on a stick. It's just natural. Whatever we are prepared to give, people say, yes, thank you very much. I think you've almost unequivocally got to decide what your culture is, decide what you're all about. You have to get people bought into that first. You can't apologize for what's not possible. And sometimes I think people try and pretend to have all these wonderful kind of mechanisms internally to make work-life balance and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, the work has to be done. So it's how you sensibly do it, managing expectations. But I genuinely feel like through a good quality recruitment process, and it starts at the recruitment process. It doesn't start when they've joined. If it starts when they've joined, you've done it wrong. It needs to start when they don't even barely know who you are. Because the decision they make to join you, is that not the same decision as why to stay? So the issue comes when they join a company and then they think, well, wait on, I wasn't told this. Well, actually, this doesn't resemble anything like I thought. Good people don't necessarily want to leave people in the lurch, like good employees don't want to see you high and dry. But you've got to be true on your promises.
That's a good question. You've talked about home working and remote working. Obviously, in the creative sector that we're talking to marketing people, COVID, bored of talking about it, but actually we've had 3 or 4 people off with it in the last 6 weeks. I've got somebody off right now, but not me, thankfully. But the latest research says that almost 2/3 of job seekers are seeking fully remote roles ahead of the summer. So this was just done before the summer.
Yeah.
What's your experience of that fully remote roles? And because you mentioned it earlier, but you didn't go into it much. Like, is it fully remote, or is it a hybrid, or is it? Because you were saying that senior people want people back in the office, and the generation millennials or Gen Z want to be at home. What's your experience?
My experience is, I would say here in Leeds, people like hybrid. Ideally, I actually wouldn't say it's 100% remote, and I am seeing. They want flexibility, but they also, through COVID, what they've realised is if you're not around with a team of people, and I think creatively and marketing as well, you have to have collaboration. Now, yes, you can do collaboration with tools, with tech tools we've been talking about. It's been a big subject. But there's nothing, the way I look at things is, in this always on learning mindset, how can you always be learning when you're not around people to learn from? Now, yes, you can do it remotely, but my money, it doesn't feel the same. It's not the same. So I feel like, they do want flexibility. I think 3 days in the office, 2 days at home is the most popular model that people ask me for. But again, it's
and how often are you asked for that? Like, is that everybody?
Pretty much all the time. Yeah, all the time. Everybody. No, but nobody says I want to be in office. 5 days a week.
And what about the 4-day week then? Is that something that's a bit of a flash in the pan, or
I think it's a flash in the pan. Genuinely, I do. I've seen companies trialing it. I've seen them putting bits on LinkedIn saying how wonderful it's worked. I don't know.
Publicity's done.
Yeah, I think it is a flash in the pan.
I've got another question. So I went down to the a PR conference down south, and basically I was talking to a number of owners in the PR sector. This is a PR conference, so PR founders and owners, and they're all from London, right? So we're based in the north of the UK in Leeds, and I know you cover the whole of the UK, and they were just telling me about talent acquisition and talent retention, going back to Will's point. And they said, in London, it's a fucking nightmare because they find people, they get them in their job, they're in the job for 12 months, and then they go.
Yeah.
And he's, unless you're one of the big 5 PR agencies in the UK or, the big agencies.
Is that through headhunting? Are they getting stolen away from them, or?
Yeah, I think people they just said the hardest thing, if you're one of, and let's face it, there's a lot of agencies in London, because it's so competitive, unless you're one of the big guys, to keep hold of people is just so challenging. Is that anything you've experienced?
I mean, I like to bring talent up from London. So I'm like the Pied Piper. Yeah, sorry, Londoners. I'm like the Pied Piper going, it's much better up here. And I think one thing that the Northern, and I know we've got some mechanisms to shout about our wins and what we do in this industry, but I think we need to do more, because if you ask candidates are really not aware of the kind of campaigns we work on up here. So you're doing your job for your clients, right? And this goes back to your employer branding. You do the job for your clients, you reward your clients with your skill, your expertise, but you don't put it in your recruitment packs. You don't talk about the brands to the level where actually people think, wait a minute, if they're dealing with Moët & Chandon, for example, in Leeds, I don't need to go to London. I don't need to have that big kind of
overhead.
And it's a broader reputational issue, North v London, isn't it? I think for a lot of people, it's seen as a kind of a pilgrimage. We graduate, we go to London. You have to work in London to get great experience.
Yeah, I did it.
But actually, there's a massive tech industry in Leeds. Manchester's absolutely booming. You don't necessarily need to make that move, do you?
Do you know, honestly, I'm officially an economic migrant from Sunderland. So I had to come to Yorkshire to find the kind of work that I wanted to do. But now I think, with our brilliant universities, we're so lucky we've got fantastic universities. And actually, I would say over the last 5 years, there's been a notable increase in people staying here after university, and not just instantly. It's not their immediate thought to go, I have to go to London. And I meet so many candidates now who say, actually, Mel, I really don't want to go to London. So I'm dealing with the opposite.
I think that's the COVID effect.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people just went, hang on a minute, I don't need to go down there. But the problem, because London is the be all, it is the centre metropolis of where everything is, and especially in our industry, what we work in, I'd say 90 something percent. I don't know what the stats are in London. So, but yeah, you're right. You can have a very good career in any of the regions, in any of the other cities.
Maybe it's a PR. I mean, what we need really is we need a
northern powerhouse, Richie.
You do, yeah, which we were promised, and we're not getting.
And we endlessly talk about that.
That's what we need.
Did not all the regional boroughs need to join up and promote the north as a more attractive
100%,
destination?
100%. There was All In, wasn't there? There was the campaign with
Channel 4 to come to Leeds.
Yeah,
and Channel 4 is now open.
And then the whole industry got together.
Well, Leeds needs to work with Manchester, and I can't see that happening anytime soon.
It's the divide, isn't it?
I don't know. I think, there's rivalry's good. Again, if I'm taking my lessons from tech people don't approach collaboration the same way that a lot of marketing firms do. They're much more open. Just much more open.
But it's not us, right? So, when you say marketing firms, it's not just us, because we've got clients everywhere in the UK, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, if you're based in a particular area, like I pitched years ago for the Commonwealth Games in Scotland from a London agency, actually. And I thought, there's no way we're winning this. And they went with a Scottish agency. And I'm not saying they were probably better than us, but what you do notice is, like a Manchester brand is more likely to go with a Manchester agency, and maybe a London brand is more likely to go with a London agency. Maybe it's just the locality. I don't know. I've seen that. So it's not the agencies. I think it's more the clients actually think, oh well, they're just round the corner or they're closer. I don't know.
But what about the collaboration working though? Like I think so what will happen, I think, is that you'll win a pitch and you'll do a huge PR piece, say, yay, we've won this pitch, we're fully integrated, we're doing X, Y, Z. But I don't know, as an industry, I don't feel like do you think people really, I think it feels a bit more scrappy, a bit more like, I want to win this fight and I want to win it at all costs.
Right.
Do you?
What do you think, Will?
You're talking Northern agencies' approach to pitching? No,
I'm talking about people in the same shoes as you. So other agencies, you might be competing. I just find, say, like in tech, although they're competing for business as well, they collaborate more.
Oh. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think tech has a long-standing tradition of collaboration, doesn't it? And I think the tendency is, certainly in agency land, traditionally there's been a reticence to collaborate. I think actually that's getting better. I mean, I think people are a bit more growing up about it.
Digital Festival, for instance, which is
exactly.
the UK's biggest open digital. It's all marketing and tech, isn't it? Together, free. And they had some great speakers this year. I know you're involved in that.
I am.
Back to this retention idea, because we obviously want to avoid, upskilling somebody and then them leaving within 12 months. It's just a massive waste of time and effort and money, isn't it? What's your view on? I've seen a few. Obviously, a lot of agencies do exit interviews, don't they? I've seen a trend for staying intervies, so almost annual interviews saying, why are you staying with this company? What's your view to that, and how would that work?
Idea, because it is just that cross-fertilization of your employees and the hiring manager or the company being impactful for one another. There's things that people can learn up and downstream. So if there's things that an employee, if you create and foster the right kind of environment where you can be honest, that's never a bad thing. You might not want to hear sometimes what people have to say, but far rather, if it's in a controlled way, it's better to know of any problems.
Isn't that just your performance review?
No, it's not. It's
where you discuss why you're here and what you enjoy.
No, that's more KPI. This is more.
So we use a tool called Office Vibe, and I've noticed a lot of agencies, a lot of kind of clients using that as well. And it's an employee, for anyone that doesn't know, it's an employee engagement tool, and you can get that kind of candid feedback. Why are you still in your role? What do you like about it here? What would you change? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then from there as well, you need to create actions. Employees get fed up when if there's a problem, it's spoken about and then nobody actually does anything about it. I think that just culls cultures and people just then want to leave and opt out. I think if they feel like they're staying static and they're not really learning something, that's another big issue, because the things we're discussing today, how fast this industry is growing, the different media mix you're all involved with now. I know candidates who will say to me, if I stay in this company, I'm not going to be employable in a year's time because I'm not catching up.
Wow.
Like they're aware that they're not actually at the cutting edge of what's going on. So that's like, people are trying to look after and future-proof their roles, their jobs. So I always encourage my clients to think about how can you have really good quality conversations about looking at future focus in your job and having and really adopting this sort of like always learning attitude. Because I think if you foster that, it's going to seriously lessen the reasons why people would want to walk. If you're in an environment where you're being listened to, it's look, it's not perfect. It's not like time is an issue, I think, in marketing agencies, most definitely. In a service industry, you've got a lot of demands, deadlines, things have to be done. It's difficult sometimes to carve in the time, but I feel like the companies that get it right and actually listen to the employees and actually action some of the things that they say, they don't suffer with the same sort of tenure issues.
So, this show is all about fuck-ups and mistakes in marketing. So there's people out, this is what everybody's waiting to hear.
God.
And the best ones are always the candid ones where people tell us the truth.
And I must admit, we in the show notes, we like the sound of your fuck-up.
Oh, God.
So do you want to tell us what professional mistake you've made and what you learned from it?
Oh, dear. Well, this was, so as I mentioned, I worked at Leeds Beckett University. Don't kill me, Leeds Beckett University. But when the VC was having a really high profile gathering, there was loads of important people there. So as part of the recruitment business I set up for them, I used to hire like hospitality staff, which were all students, obviously, because we had hospitality courses. So it does come with its issues. So, I mean, they just decided to play a game of, what's that thing you call it when you go around nicking drinks?
Oh, minesweeping.
Minesweeping at a whole new level. Yeah, minesweeping.
So you're told.
At a whole new level. So all these students were meant to be, you know, catering the event, waitressing, whatnot. Well, anyway, they saw the amount of alcohol and everything, and they just got a bit giddy, and it was far too tempting. So they kind of like had a lot of champagne and wine, and I got a call from security saying, Mel, you need to come down here. And I was like, why? What's going on? They're like, all your students are mortal behind a skip, and they've just basically, you know, helped themselves.
Don't want behind a skip.
They were mortal.
Mortal.
Have you not heard mortal?
Yeah, it's like
drunk.
Hammered.
Hammered.
Right,
hammered.
okay, yeah.
Absolutely mortal. So, yeah, surrounded by empty bottles, and I had to pick each student up and say, you're supposed to be representing a university here. I mean...
How many of them were leathered?
About 8.
And how did you sober them up is the real question. Coffee
and a stern word.
Words, yeah, absolutely.
I was saying to them, you know, God, you represent your university here. We're going to get killed here.
Did the VC see?
No, no.
Phew.
Kind of managed to just sort of, yeah, no.
What was the worst thing they did? How did they know they were leathered? Were they dropping things?
Well, yeah. And of course, the security guard had called me to say, well, anyway, they'd all nicked off, hadn't they? They were all behind the skip. Drinking.
I mean,
they must have drunk a lot if a skip looked like an appealing place.
Skip load.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that wasn't.
So what's your lesson there then?
Oh, well, I wouldn't change. You know, the funny thing is, I wouldn't change it because, I mean, obviously, this was me getting students into jobs, but. You know, I don't know. It was just, you know, it was like a bit Lord of Flies mentality. Once one started, they all started. But, I mean, I can laugh about it now. At the time, it felt like a bit, oh, my God. But actually, it is their university. So, I mean, they get told off a little bit, but not as bad as it could have been. If it had been like a client, it would have been absolutely horrific. It was bad enough, but... We got through it.
I've got a few questions from people off Twitter, actually.
Okay.
Sorry, X, Elon. Sorry. Anane has asked on Twitter, who is likely to be a good fit for a CMO, a generalist or a specialist?
$50 million question there. So, I always think the best rule of thumb with this is the CMO should have at least one deep sector knowledge expertise, and then also be able to do the helicopter big picture stuff. So I think I'm doing a typical politician's answer here. I think it's
it depends.
I mean, you want them to have the bigger picture as a CMO, but I really think they should have at least one sector knowledge expertise, and then obviously collaborate with the rest of the team and bring expertise in as and when you need it. But yeah, I think a total generalist I don't think would be right.
So just on that, before you ask the second question, I read somewhere that the average CMO stays in post for about 18 months, which is less than the lifespan of the average hamster. So what's going on there?
Wow, you've teed up Matt's question, Matt Box on X.
Oh, look at that. See,
he says, why are CMO's tenures so low? So same question.
Burnout, sometimes conflicting demands. Sometimes CMOs don't see eye to eye with the rest of the team. There can be some sort of behaviours there which maybe is not helpful, and that just makes people think they want to leave. Sometimes low budgets, not having, you know, the kind of budget that they want to be able to see to do the project well can be frustrating. Sometimes a lack of talent, even in the team, you know, if they haven't got anyone that can actually get to help, can be equally frustrating. So a little bit of everything, actually. In fact, now that we've actually verbalised, it's quite a lot of reasons.
And meeting targets and achieving results ultimately. And on that, actually, CEOs. So most CEOs come from a financial background, don't they? They're typically FD before they become CEO. You don't often see CMOs becoming CEOs. Have you thought about that?
Do you know, I haven't until I've been posed that question.
Just to put you on the spot.
Thanks, Will.
Although marketing people do make good CEOs, I've seen. You know, if they've got a strong marketing background, they believe in marketing the business. But I mean, I just always think that they've got really successful businesses usually. You usually see a CMO or a head of marketing, if they get promoted, do quite a good job of a CEO or MD role.
But most blue chips are from an FD background who are CEOs. But anyway.
I always think it's better to really understand and know you've got to know your market. You've got to know your push and pulls.
Does it lack credibility, I suppose? I mean, at a board level, does the role of CMO lack credibility in comparison with an FD?
Does marketing or comms lack?
Well, traditionally, particularly with PR, this is something Stephen Waddington has talked about in depth. It's the kind of the prestige and status of PR as a discipline amongst the C-suite, which is, it kind of fluctuates, doesn't it? Really?
Well, it depends. If the shit hits the fan, all of a sudden you're the biggest, you're the most important person in the room. Quick, ask the PR professional, what the fuck do we do here? Whereas if just day to day churning out news stories and everything's going well, what do you know? You don't need to be in this meeting. Tends to be. I mean, I'm generalizing there, obviously, but I think that the PR person becomes more important if there's a crisis. Marketing, the marketers, if they're very good marketers, they know their shit. And I think if you're a good CEO, you should listen to them. John Houston on Twitter has asked, postgraduate professional qualifications, yes or no? Postgraduate professional qualifications, should you get one? Or are they just a waste of time?
Oh, God.
Sorry for all you academics listening.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking, oh, God. I mean, I've got Graph now. I'm fully independent of higher education. It depends. Here I go. No, then I'll tell you why.
Breaking news. It
depends.
Get off the fence.
I don't think you need one per se. I don't. So, but I used to deal with the MBAs from, say, American universities coming over here. So I think if there's something else which is actually a better learning experience, I think theoretically, do you need it? I don't think so.
As our client is the University of Oxford and provides excellent MBAs online, I would always say that you should always get one.
An MBA. I think, when you're looking at sort of, that is a point where it wants to be highly collaborative and you need to be learning from people in industry. I think as long as you're learning from others in industry, so we would get people over here in Leeds who'd say worked for Google or for Coca-Cola in the States. So I think that exchange of knowledge almost transcends the certificate. So I think as long as it's got something else robust that you can actually think, conversely, we would send students over there. So again, you're seeing a different culture, a different setup. What is it? How are their marketing agencies different to the way we go about things? Are they in front? Are we behind? Is it level playing fields? What is it? So I think just to do talk and chalk, no, you've proven that, you've done that.
Yeah.
I cannot. I mean, unless you're obsessed with like fancy frames on the wall with certificates in.
It's not that. I just think for professional development, like when you become a senior marketing person, like myself, I've taught at university and now I constantly want to learn. So I am actually interested in what the University of Oxford's MBA is, but I can't dedicate the time to it.
No.
And fair play to anyone that does that, because I've got kids and, and you run a business and there's all the other things. So anybody that does
everyone does that Mark Ritson one, don't they?
And he's brilliant, by the way.
MBA. Yeah. So I think, you can, I think the trouble is, like you say, unfortunately, in higher education, it might mean taking a year out of work or, really dedicating a lot of time that people might not have the time, the money. The money's another thing. Postgrad's a lot more expensive. So it is but I think there's other bite-sized learning you can do that's very high quality.
So you've been on the show now. You've got the premise of what we cover and everything. If you were us, who would you next interview for our next podcast?
Get an academic in to ask about, the relevance of, for example, postgraduate and some of the gaping holes you can see in the curriculum. What do you feel as employers you need? And if the skills are not there, do something about it.
I will.
Work with, like you say, you've lectured up there, so you've got, the same people I do.
Well, do you know the last interview we did? Someone recommended we speak to Richard Bailey, who I've worked with. So Richard Bailey, I'm coming for you. I'm going to get him on the show. Hopefully he'll come on.
I'm sorry to do this, Neil Smith, but Neil, stand up, or Yanis, or get Yanis in, or
I've worked with Yanis.
Yeah, or Shirley. Oh, lovely Shirley, Shirley Beresford. Yeah.
And just as a bit of a summary then, what are the top 3 things companies can do to attract and retain talent? The most important things they can possibly do?
So the top 3 things clients can do to attract and retain talent is have a really good employee potential briefing document that goes a little further than just a basic job description. This is the marketing industry, this is the PR industry. You should be wonderful at putting sort of, documents together, lots of photos, lots of things people can see. They're like that. Again, if you look at the industry with video, things are going visual. It's no different for people looking at work. From an attraction point of view, your narrative needs to be honest. Don't fight or worry about who's bigger than you or what you don't have. There's no point in dwelling on that. It is what it is. Just put your offer out as it is, warts and all. And you'll find just by being honest and managing expectations, you'll get the same with the candidates. They won't expect you to be slick and super organised if that's not what you are. So that's from an attraction point, employee brand is king. And treat it like you would a client work. So the way you would work for a client, work for your own brand when it comes to recruitment. So if you're not putting a lot out there about why it's good to work here, there's your problem. Number 2 is in terms of retention, learning, development, always on attitude. Doesn't need to cost a lot of money. Can be things like, cross-age group training. You can do it internally with your own people. It doesn't always have to be an external requirement, but just foster this culture of learning and always wanting to learn and make it visible. Loads of companies do well with things like recommending books before people join. Oh, and your onboarding has to be like finesse. Your onboarding, if people don't feel welcome the minute they get here, that little seed of doubt germinates right there in that minute. So just things like, how much effort does it take to go and get someone their own mug? Get them like something they might have mentioned in an interview. What kind of chocolate do you like? Anything personal, make it personal. They want to feel welcome and they want to feel like they've joined a good place that's going to look after them. It's simple stuff. It's not all the, like you say, the foosball tables. And honestly, when I see this thing about, we have such an active social life and you can go out drinking. On a Friday night after you've done 60 hours, let's just say, for example, in the office, don't you want to spend time with your own friends and family? Like, I get the thing, but this blend of, you have to blend your personal life with work life. Why do you have to do that if you don't want to? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just seems it's become an industry thing. Like, we've all got to get on 24/7 and want to be with each other all the time. What if you don't? What if you're an introvert and you're just not into it?
So thanks for coming on the show, Melanie.
No problem.
Really enjoyed the chat.
Well, I think recruitment unfairly has got a bad reputation, but hopefully you've redressed the balance through that hour of conversation.
So. Yeah, you're the yin to the recruiter's yang, right?
I hope so.
So where can people find you if they like what they've heard today and they think, oh my God, she's hit the nail on the head. I want to get in contact with Melanie and get her involved.
So look up Graph Talent. So www.graphtalent.co.uk, all the usual social handles. You'll hear me if you're in Leeds, let's be honest. I mean, if the window's open, you're going to be able to know where I am. I'll pop up all sorts of places, networking, and obviously, just on the website.
Well, I mean, we can't talk PR people. We don't have the best rep.
No, PR people, everyone thinks we hand out flyers at Ibiza. So, let's face it, we don't, just to be clear.
When clients call us, they're like, just put a bit of spin on this, will you? And they see us as people that just spin things, which is awful.
When was the last time you put some spin on something, Will? When was it?
I'm not rising to your question. Bit different there, Chris, but some real value for those people hiring talent in the region, nationally and beyond. And I think there's 3 or 4 kind of key takeaways I got from that. First of all, the idea that building the employer brand is time well spent. And the whole idea is you don't have to necessarily, you might not have the biggest budgets in terms of paying salaries. You might not have pool tables in the office or incredible training programs, but actually having an honest and authentic employer brand is worth its weight in gold.
I just like the fact she deconstructed that we don't have to dislike recruitment consultants as much as we do. Anybody out there that's managing a marketing team or a PR team or a digital team will be getting inundated with LinkedIn messages. And that's my view of recruiters. And we work with them quite a lot. And I think she did bring back some sort of confidence to it. She knows the market, she knows what people are looking for, and she knows what candidates want. Because candidates have changed, and I thought that was quite enlightening. Because if people have listened to this, like you said, the pool table thing always gets listened to. Every time I hear about, even when I started in the job, it was like, do you have a pool table? Tennis table. It is pretty irrelevant. It's about authenticity, right?
And failing to adapt to those changes in the markets is absolutely crazy, isn't it? And you know, things like the fact that people quite understandably want to work a hybrid model or want to work remotely. Learning and development is a massive focus now. People quite rightly want a path, don't they? A path and a clear development plan. And
not necessarily to CEO, though.
No, but people want to know where they're going. It's things like investment in learning and development and giving people a kind of a clear path of development. And yeah, as you said, it doesn't mean everyone's going to become CEO in 2 or 3 years, but people quite rightly want to know how their position is going to evolve and change over time.
Yeah, people want to know they're being listened to. The feedback thing was a big thing. I actually thought your question about staying interview was interesting, because obviously we have a lot of conversations with all of our employees regularly. We have monthly meetings, we have reviews and everything. But a staying interview is a whole other set of that I thought was quite interesting. You brought that to the party. I thought, where did he pull that one from?
Well, it's I guess it's, as an employer, you're going to get some uncomfortable truths, aren't you? The more you listen to people. We get it through Office Vibe. You get candid feedback, and some people aren't yet ready for that. But I think ignoring it is crazy. I'd rather know how people feel and what people want, and you can then make decisions based on that rather than burying your head in the sand. And I guess the staying interview is an extension of that. Yeah,
you're just basically stopping an issue becoming from a small acorn into a massive issue, a big tree. So yeah, I agree with you, and I don't know like the tree reference, but there you go. So Will, tell me, what were your preconceptions about interviewing a recruiter before we did it today?
I think unfairly, I tarnish all recruiters with the same brush, and I think often we get unsolicited emails offering people, people in different positions, and we get them every day, to be quite honest, don't we?
Yeah.
But actually, recruitment goes way beyond that, and what we're talking about today was kind of talent acquisition, talent strategy. And that's the real value I think recruiters can add. And I think perhaps a small part of the market does tarnish the rest of the market, which is doing fantastic work.
Well, there's good marketers, there's good recruiters, clearly. And if you want great talent, if you use a great recruiter, hopefully they'll get you that great bit of creative talent that you want. Because great creatives, we discussed loads of stuff today, but what I love about it is it still comes down to brilliant people. Your business is only as good as the people that are in it. So you need to be recruiting great creative people, and that doesn't include the 2 video guys that are pointing at each other in this room.
And laughing when we speak.
Yeah, laughing at themselves. Yeah. Oh, God.
We'll discipline them later, Chris, don't worry. One of the things actually which we touched on but probably didn't explore in great detail is hiring people with the right values and a kind of cultural alignment. And I think that's so important, isn't it? And I think if you get your employer brand piece right, naturally you're going to attract candidates that are the right cultural fit for you, and they share the same values and they're respectful of your values.
But we did touch on the job description being the first route into the employee. And job descriptions, even from the most creative agencies, are often a pile of utter crap, aren't they? So you talked about using video and things like that. I mean, we do that on our website, and we've got, but I think that we've done it too. Our job descriptions, we could probably make them a bit sexier. Is that the term?
I think we could make our job descriptions more engaging. I think we could talk about our culture and our values a lot more, rather than just arbitrarily listing required skills, things
arbitrarily.
Like that. The other thing I felt really important is onboarding. So you spend an awful lot of time trying to find the right people. You hire them. They come into the office on the first day. There's no one there to greet them. They're given a laptop and a phone and told to get on with it. And must be so disheartening for a candidate. You've got that one chance to get it right.
Yeah.
And set out what the next 5 years are going to look like. And so many people, us included, actually, historically, we've since changed our kind of onboarding processes, get that wrong. So I think that's so important.
I think you've got to review everything all the time. You've got to review your onboarding processes, especially during COVID. It was difficult with, people not being in the office, and you had to make everything digital. And now it's like a hybrid situation.
So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Really interesting chat with Melanie. Now, remember to check us out on sociallyunacceptable.co.uk, and you can see a full list of the different episodes.
Hit that like and subscribe.
And
definitely subscribe on YouTube. We need as many subscribers as possible. We need as many subscribers as possible.
And we love feedback as well. So any comments about the show, any suggestions for guests, please get in touch.
Chris and Will could be more articulate. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for listening to Socially Unacceptable. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn at Prohibition PR and Twitter at Socially UA. We would love to hear some of your career fuck-ups so we can share them on the show. For more information on the show, search Prohibition PR in your search engine and click on podcasts. Until next time, please keep pushing the boundaries and embracing the socially unacceptable.